Good afternoon. Welcome to our weekly Horticulture Town Hall. We are so glad that you're able to join us. My name is Donna Oftenberg, and I'm your host for today. I'm located in the southeast region of the state by Cape Girardeau. And joining us today, give me 1 second. There we go. Joining us today, if you look at the map, we have Jennifer Shooter from the Northeast region in Kirksville, Debbie Kelly from East Central region in Hillsborough, Katie Kamler from East Central region in St. Genevieve, Kathy Meacham from the Northwest region in Carrollton, Tamara Rial from Kansas City area, and from MU campus, we have Dr. Lee Miller, Jared Fogg, Dr. Pong Tian, Dr. Pat Guinan, and Dr. Trinkline. Where we have lots of topics to get to today, wonderful topics. If you have any questions at any time, make sure to send them to Kathy, who has changed her name to ask your questions here. So once again, anytime you have questions, you can just send them to her in the chat box. Make sure you include your email address. And then if we run out of time to answer any of those questions today, someone will be in touch with you to answer it. So right now we're going to start with the weather report from Pat Guinan.
Thank you, Donna, and good afternoon, everyone. I apologize if you hear a siren in the background. Every first Wednesday of the month at noon, the sirens go off. So hopefully they'll be ending shortly. Well, it is September, and meteorological summer is behind us right now. So I always like to look back to see where we've been, what we witnessed in June, July, and August, and provide a little bit of perspective on the temperature and precipitation patterns we experienced. And it's one of those summers where you really got to break it down month by month, because when you look at the numbers combined for June, July, and August, it actually comes out to look like a seasonable, near normal temperature-wise and precipitation-wise. And of course, it was anything but that here in the Show Me State. Upper left, those are the departure from normals for the month of August. August was actually our hottest month this summer, and the numbers are coming in, they're preliminary, but they are indicating it was averaged about just slightly near 2 degrees above normal for the month of August. And then on the upper right, when you combine, that's all 3 months of June, July, and August. That's our summer departure from normal. And it looks like it's going to be near normal, slightly maybe above normal, about 0.7 degrees or 0.8 degrees above normal for the entire summer. On the bottom, just again to break it down, what the temperatures were like for June, July, and August, you can see June was actually about 2 degrees above normal, averaging 74.9 degrees. It was those first 3 weeks of June that were particularly warm. We had a little bit more of a wetter, cloudier, cooler period during the end of June. Then came July. The first half of July was very wet, lots of clouds and somewhat cool. And that averaged a little bit below normal, about a little over a degree below normal. And then, of course, just this past month, again, that was our hottest month for the summer, averaged nearly 2 degrees above normal. The average temperature was 77.7 degrees. What about precipitation? Again, here in the upper left, you'll see somewhat of a dry month during the month of August. It was our driest summer month. And you can see only a few areas in the southeast, maybe along the Illinois-Missouri border above average, and right around the Kansas City area, the little pocket of above average. But for the most part, we had below normal precip. Here in mid-Missouri, it's been very dry. Over the past 6 weeks, we've seen less than 2 inches of rain in parts of Boone County. So very dry conditions. But on the right, upper right, that's the summer precipitation averages for June, July, August combined. You can see, despite the dryness we've seen here in mid-Missouri, when you look at that really wet period we had in the middle part of June and middle part of July, that really kept those departures even above normal for wetter than normal conditions here for the summer across much of northern central Missouri and then pockets of southeast and southwest Missouri. The image at the bottom really tells a better story of what we experienced for June, July, and August. June was a wet month, especially the latter half of June. July was wet as well, especially the first half of July. And in August shows the dryness that started to really impact the rest of the state. Total precip for the summer of 2021, the statewide average was a little less than 13.5 inches, which turns out to be slightly above average for the entire summer period for the state of Missouri, just a little over an inch above average for precip. Over the past 7 days, we have seen some more precipitation, especially over the past couple days across parts of north central, northwest Missouri. East central Missouri saw some big rains over the past week. And in the table here showing the actual rain gauge reports, you can see those numbers reflected according to the map of east central, northwest Missouri, where there are many reports of 2 to as much as over 3 inches here in Holt County, Adair County, and north central Missouri. Kirksville had 3.5 inches. Over in St. Louis, quite a few reports of over 2 to more than 3 inches, as well as just north of St. Louis County and Lincoln County, almost 4 inches of rain over the past 7 days. It looks like for the week, the best days
We've
of
got
the
over
week in
3
regard
inches
to
of rain in
seasonable
St. Louis in
temperatures.
the past week.
And I'm sorry. Oh, well, it looks like the weather story, the best days of the week will be today and tomorrow in regard to seasonable temperatures, even slightly below normal, with lower dew points, lower humidities. And so that's more comfortable to be outside. Hopefully you have opportunities to be outside today and tomorrow, because those will be the 2 peak days of the week. These are the current conditions from just about 10 to 15 minutes ago. You can see in the upper left, generally statewide, we have temperatures in the mid to upper 70s, even some lower 80s down in the Boot Heel. Dew points much lower than what we've seen over the past several days. Typically, dew points around this time or the past few days were generally in the low to mid 70s, and they're running 5 to 10 degrees lower. So much more comfortable conditions, especially over about the northern 2/3 of the state. A little bit more humid when you go over far southern Missouri. The weather outlook for today and tomorrow does look very pleasant. I think the best temperatures in regard to more seasonable below normal temperatures will be across the northern half of the state, a little bit warmer over southern parts of Missouri. That would place highs generally in the low to mid 80s across much of the state, perhaps even some lower 90s in far southwestern Missouri. On Thursday, it's pretty much a carbon copy with, again, temperatures in the low to mid 80s and a little bit hotter in southwest Missouri, perhaps reaching in the lower 90s. The Labor Day weekend outlook in the lower right does indicate another chance of more showers and thunderstorms impacting our state late Thursday night into Friday morning into Saturday. Those temperatures, you'll notice more humid conditions, higher dew points as we go into Friday and Saturday, with those better chances of scattered showers and thunderstorms. That perhaps could linger into southern Missouri on Sunday. Better, less humid conditions as we go into Sunday, especially over the northern 2/3 of the state, and a fairly nice day on Labor Day as well, with generally highs maybe running a little bit above average in the mid to upper 80s, even some lower 90s, perhaps across southern Missouri. This is the outlook for precipitation over the next 5 days. I think when I look at this and what the forecasts are saying, it looks like the highest opportunity for receiving this much precip will be coming late Thursday night into Friday as well as Saturday. It does look like there are opportunities for a couple systems to be impacting our state. And you can see the contours reflecting that, anywhere from about a 1/2 inch across southern Missouri to as much as an inch to an inch and a half, even a little bit of a 2-inch contour going right over around the Kansas City area. So some notable significant precipitation. Hopefully we'll see that in mid-Missouri, because it's been very dry across parts of mid-Missouri, where we've seen less than 2 inches over the past 6 weeks. So it does look like some pretty good chances, especially as we go into Friday and Saturday, for some notable rainfall. This is a forecast for next week. They are indicating perhaps another system to move through the state, bringing in some cooler temperatures as we go into the middle and latter part of next week. The blues are indicative of an enhanced likelihood of below normal temperatures, and you can see much of the upper Midwest, about the eastern 2/3 of Missouri, where we'll see those cooler temperatures are anticipated. That would put highs probably in the lower 80s, upper 70s to lower 80s. Some nice September weather as we go in through the first and second week of the month. Warmer conditions out west. It does look like here on the right, perhaps some drier conditions. It looks like perhaps this cooler Canadian air will have a lot of moisture with it, and so lesser opportunities for any significant rainfall. Again, our best chances of rain over the next week, it looks to be on Friday and this coming Saturday. And Donna, that's pretty much a weather report. I'll hand it back over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pat. I know down here in Cape Girardeau area, we are dry. We were hoping to get a little bit of moisture from that hurricane that came through, but that just didn't pan out for us. So I'm hoping that forecast is correct. So at this point, I would like to turn it over to Jennifer as your moderator. Take it away.
All right, thank you, Donna, and good afternoon, everyone. And I'll just mention that in my rain gauge just outside of Kirksville, I have 4 inches of rain. We got that rain from about 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. yesterday morning. And, you know, it seemed like it rained all spring and summer here, and then it shut off in August, and we were getting really dry. Our lawns were turning brown. So we were glad to have the rain. Probably didn't need 4 inches, though, in such a short period of time. And I do hope that those of you in drier areas of Missouri will get some rain because we were thankful to have it here in Northeast Missouri yesterday. So, okay, now moving on to our first question. I'll tell you that our first question comes from Shelby County, comes from a master gardener in my region. And the question is, we planted several red maple seeds. I don't know the exact cultivar, and 1 silver maple seed in pots in late spring. They are 10 to 15 inches tall now and still in pots. How should we winter these trees? Would they survive in an unheated greenhouse or shed? Would they survive just in the pots, in the ground? Do we need to bring them into a basement? Please advise. And Kathy, would you please answer this question?
Yes, thanks, Jennifer. I'll say here too, in the Lexington area, I've had rain 3 days in a row. It's kind of pop-up showers, some kind of hard, but it's been greatly appreciated. So there's a picture of the seedlings up, and what you want to do is leave them outdoors and mulch heavily. Straw is a really good insulator, and so you could use straw. And you want to cover them with about 6 inches of mulch on the top and then about 6 inches around the sides. Now, you could also sink these pots into the soil, also mulch heavily. But if you don't want to go to that trouble, and I see you've got quite a few, you just follow these recommendations. So you want to wait too until the trees are dormant or hardened off before covering them. But absolutely cover them before we get sub-freezing temperatures, and water them thoroughly before you cover, and make sure that the foliage and the stems are dry before covering. If you decide to not sink them, then group the pots close together in an area, a protected area. Protection from extreme winds is best. You want to check them also throughout the winter for moisture, especially if you're not receiving much rain or snow in your area. Make sure that you check them for water. And since they are such small pots, in the beginning, I would check them fairly often and then just kind of moderate from there how often you think that they might need to be watered. I would also, while I was checking, I'd just be checking for rodent damage too. And then if you need to somehow protect them from that, I don't know if a fenced in area, something like that. But don't overwater. That's a key to everything. And so I would check it frequently and make sure that they don't dry out. When you uncover them in the spring, do it kind of gradually. When the temperatures start to increase, but after the danger of any sub-freezing temperatures. Also remember, almost any time, a healthy tree or seedling will have the best choice for surviving. And these containers are small. If you wanted to, you could put them in a larger pot, just set the smaller pot inside the larger pot, cover in that gap, 2 to 3 inch gap, you could fill that with mulch as well. And then, do what I said earlier, just cover the tops and cover the bottoms or cover the sides, Also in the coming months, we'll be talking about preparing for mulching getting all the plants ready for fall. So it's time, our winter. So it's time to start thinking about that, but you don't want to do it this early. So anyway, more to come on that topic in the coming weeks.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yep.
The next question we have is on dogwood and anthracnose. And the question is, I've heard there is a fungal disease affecting dogwoods. Have you heard of this? What are the signs? And is there an effective treatment? And Pong is going to tell us about this problem.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Peng Tian from MU Plant Diagnostic Clinic. Today, we're going to talk about the dogwood and anthracnose. And this disease was caused by a fungus, and its name is called Discula destructiva. Just based on the name, you can tell it's very destructive, and you don't want to name anything like this destructiva. So this disease was first reported in late 1970s in United States and was recently found in St. Louis area. Fortunately, this is only part of a region in the States that this dogwood and anthracnose would confirmed. Therefore, everyone is very careful for this disease since it is very deadly for dogwood. If you have a concern about your tree or you want to verify whether it is the dogwood and anthracnose, you can contact the MDC Forester or report to their email address. You can always send a sample to my lab for confirmation, and I will also report to Missouri Department of Agriculture. Now let's talk about what this disease is and what a symptom it is. For many of you who regularly attend a town hall meeting, you might still remember my talk on anthracnose on trees and shrubs maybe a couple months ago. And you can tell those two photos are maple tree and a sycamore tree and anthracnose disease. I think during that talk, I mentioned to you that in those trees, even though you can see the lesions and the spots are everywhere, cause a lot of defoliation, but somehow they will leaf out during the season or next year, depends on the weather condition. This type of anthracnose is called spot anthracnose, which is very native to the North America. And this disease can also affect dogwood. However, this type of spot anthracnose is primarily on the leaf. So it will cause leaf spots or leaf lesions and only leads to the potential just cosmetic issues. However, unlike those native spot anthracnose commonly seen in dogwoods, which is shown here, today we're going to talk about another disease which is not a native to North America. It's called dogwood and anthracnose. This disease is very deadly for the dogwood, and it starts with similar lesions like we saw spots and anthracnose, like the lesions or spots with purple or green. And in the earlier season, in the flowering season, you can see it can cause a lesion on the flower. Eventually, the disease progresses normally really fast, and it will spread to the branch and twigs, cause twig dieback, and eventually it will progress to more part of the tree, causing the canker or branch dieback and causing the death of plants in a very fast way. So if you have any type of a symptom you saw from the plants, keep us posted. You can take photos and send to contact our lab, send to our lab email address. And remember, this disease is very aggressive, and they are very easy to disperse among different dogwood. Also, it will cause the twig dieback and branch dieback very fast. Now let's switch gear and talk about disease management. First, let's talk about prevention. So when you select plants, try to select the disease-free plants from the reliable nursery. Please don't do transplanting trees from the forest or mountain area, because that's where the the disease become more prevalent. And there are some disease-resistant varieties in the market. You can also check that out. I will also put a link of the disease fact of this disease. Second point, like I have the most important suggestion I give for all the clients, have good irrigation, fertilization, and good mulching will build up the health of the plant so that you will turn your plant to be more resistant to the disease. Third, have a good scouting, check your plant regularly, check any dead tissue, and make sure it is not disease related. And if you see any dead tissues or showing similar symptom that I showed in this talk, let us know. And then have a good sanitation. You will need to do the pruning or removing the dead or destroyed the dead wood in the tree almost like yearly, and rake the leaves on the ground so that they will not become the secondary inoculation or inoculum source for the next year. As regarding the, oh, by the way, for pruning, the other suggestion, try to avoid mechanical or chemical injury to the tree, which will weaken the tree health condition. However, when something happens, you have to prune. So only prune when it is necessary, and avoid excessive trimming, or that will cause a lot of mechanical injuries. And regarding the chemical application for fungicide, you can apply fungicide in the spring, starting in the bud brick, so that you can spray every 10 to 14 days until the leaves are fully expanded. That's all I have. I do have the information sheet in the chat box. You can click it, study this disease, and keep our lab or Missouri Department Conservation posted. I appreciate that. Have a good day.
On to our next question, and it is, I have a gray striped blister bug infestation on my beets. Is there an organic control? I've been using insecticidal soap. Is pyrethrin organic or safe to use on my vegetables? And we believe the insect they're referring to is actually a blister beetle, and Tamara is going to talk to us about that.
Hi. So yes, we are looking at a blister beetle, and the short answer for this question is yes. You can use pyrethrins to take care of it, but another way that a lot of people will take care of this beetle when they have it on their crops is hand picking. That said, the name of this beetle is descriptive of a defense mechanism this beetle uses liberally. So it can release a caustic substance that can cause blisters on the skin. So if you do see a beetle that looks like this, please wear gloves so that you can use that control strategy. So there are some things you can spray. If you don't have very much, it might just be easier to hand pick them off and put them in, either crush them or put them in a container of soapy water. So just to give a little bit more information about these beetles, though, these beetles range from about 1/2 inch to 1 inch in length. They're readily recognized by their characteristic shape. They're rather narrow and cylindrical. They have a soft body. Even though they're a beetle, their wings are rather soft, and they have this neck-like, or this neck-like appearance right here. So it looks like they have a neck, and they have a rather large head. Another thing that's characteristic about this beetle is you can see more of the abdomen. The wings don't actually make it all the way to cover the entire abdomen. So you'll see this pointed shape at the end. Let's see. This isn't the only way that they look. There's actually several species. This is another one of our blister beetles. It's common here in Missouri, and they can actually cause a fair amount of damage. They tend to move in swarms and can defoliate your plants. However, they don't usually stay in an area for very long. They can be out right now. So if you're reaching into your plants to pick things, just be careful. And then one more thing I want to mention is that people aren't the only ones who need to be careful with this beetle. If you have horses, this beetle is something definitely to be aware of because horses are susceptible to the toxin that they release, cantharidin. It is actually for horses to consume a lethal dose of this chemical. So that only happens typically when if these beetles are actually in their alfalfa. So if you're feeding your horses alfalfa, watch out for blister beetles. You do need to be careful because it can be very, very dangerous for your horses. So that's it for blister beetles.
All right, thank you. And our next topic is regarding tomatoes with a point. And Dr. Trinkline is going to address this.
Thank you, Jennifer. There are a couple of situations that might cause tomatoes to form a point on what we call the blossom end. That's the end away from the stem. The first is genetic, and there are certain tomato varieties that are prone to do that. Most often, these are varieties that are destined to be processed. Varieties that do that are destined to go on to the produce table in the supermarket as slicers. This is not a good trait because that tip at the end tends to bruise and perhaps to cause rot to occur. In the case of genetic, it is perfectly harmless. The tomato is perfectly fine to eat. It might not look like you think a tomato should look, but still it's harmless. The other cause is not so harmless. Tomatoes that have been the victim of off-target herbicide drift, especially those herbicides that have what we call a plant growth regulator type of action, examples 2,4-D or dicamba, you'll usually find that one of the symptoms is the elongation of the blossom end of the fruit. It will be accompanied, however, with twisted foliage. So in those cases, if you see elongated tomatoes, but there is twisted foliage, especially the new growth, then it's very questionable that those should be consumed because they might contain trace amounts of the herbicide that cause both the foliage to twist as well as the tomato to elongate. Unfortunately, well, there is a test that can be done to verify that, but the test costs hundreds of times what the tomato is worth. So I would just discard them and try to find out what caused the off-target herbicide damage. I think that's all I have on that subject.
Okay, thank you. And now it's time for our weekly friend or foe with Tamara.
Thank you. If you wait just a second, I will get it up. Hold on. Okay. All right, I don't suppose you can see it yet.
No.
There you go. See it now?
Yes, I can see it.
Wonderful. Okay, I'm going to activate the poll. There we go. So now you can let us know whether you think this is a friend, foe, neither, or it depends. And if you don't have access to the poll, please go ahead and put it in the chat. I'm going to give you just a couple more seconds. And then I'm going to end the poll. Okay. Here we go. And then I will share the results. Here we go. So hopefully you can see that. It looks like about half of you listed this as a friend, about 40% as a foe. Some of you said neither, and some of you said it depends. So let's find out what this is. Okay, hold on a second. Okay, so let me show you what it is. This is a soldier beetle. I have at the moment, I say it depends because for the most part, it can be rather neutral at some parts of the year. It's a soft-winged beetle. It kind of looks like the blister beetle that I was telling you earlier. However, it is not a blister beetle. They are quite common during the summer. They're also nicknamed leatherwings. And these beetles can be sometimes rather abundant and may become accidental invaders in the house in the fall. And so in that case, they can be a nuisance. However, these beetles are predaceous and they will feed on other insects, such as caterpillars or aphids or other soft-bodied insects. So with that, I'm going to say they're a friend. They also can be a pollinator. If you look at this picture, you can see how it is covered in pollinator. I'd say they're not a very effective pollinator, but given that they can kind of be this accidental pollinator and they are eating some of our other pests, insects in the garden, I'm going to say overall they are a friend. So that's it. Back to you, Jennifer.
Okay, thank you. And I'll just mention that this time of the year, we see a lot of soldier beetles on goldenrod here in Northeast Missouri, and I'm assuming probably all over the state. Okay, our next question is, will the excess heat and lack of rain affect the blooming of my garden chrysanthemums? And Dr. Trinkline is going to answer this question.
Thank you, Jennifer. Chrysanthemums respond to high temperatures, a phenomenon we call bud delay, meaning that the bloom is going to be a little bit later than it normally is. I think we all know that chrysanthemums are short day plants. They bloom in response to the shortening days of fall. I don't think that the temperatures that we experienced were that severe for that long to cause more than maybe a day or two difference. Must remember to keep all of our garden plants well watered. Commercial growers who are growing garden mums, as we meet in the town hall, are growing in what's called a soilless medium, very porous, very oxygen laden, and that's good for root growth. But on the other hand, it doesn't hold as much water as native soil. And I know of growers who this past week, when it was so hot, were having to water 3 times a day. Now, mind you, they have automatic drip irrigation, so it wasn't that laborious. But it's a reminder to us, if we have our garden plants and it was wet all summer and all of a sudden we have what's called a flash drought, we really need to watch for wilting and watering. That said, this is an ideal time if you want to start some garden mums in your perennial border to go out to a retail greenhouse and buy them before they're in bloom. They'll last a lot longer, and as such will establish themselves a bit faster than if we put them in the ground in full bloom. I mention this because if you do that, remember that all of the roots that were supporting the top of that plant were in the container that you took off. Therefore, applying water, 6 inches, 8 inches away from the base of the plant or where the container would have been is fairly well useless. We need to water right at the base of the plant for about the first 3 or 4 waterings, and then the roots will follow that down, establish themselves, and then we don't have to be quite as careful. But again, this is an ideal time of the year if you're wanting to expand your garden mum collection, or perhaps put some in a border, to go out and find them green. They're going to be in bud. Every greenhouse who grows them will have picture stakes or other point of purchase advertisement to show you what they're going to look like in bloom. But planting them now will make for a much nicer, longer lived garden mum. That's all I have, Jennifer.
All right, thank you. And now Dr. Lee Miller will give us a turf update and talk about grubs, particularly the masked chafer.
Thank you, Jennifer. There actually is a lot going on in the lawn world right now. So there is quite a bit of brown patch on tall fescue. We are a tall fescue state, so most of the lawns grown in the state are tall fescue. I would say somewhere around 85 or 90%. It is the preferred variety because it's the most heat tolerant of our cool season grasses. The other thing I want to note is that tall fescue can be seeded. So when we get into, I really loved Pat Guinan's weather report because it is getting into that prime time for seeding lawns. And this first week of September, at least, looks really, really good and advantageous for doing so. So think about overseeding your lawn rather than right now applying a fungicide or a brown patch if you've had or been plagued by that this summer. Getting into the insect world, last week I talked about fall armyworms. We started seeing them on our research plots. We know that they're well ingrained in the southern portion of the state, so keep an eye out for those. Insecticides that contain spinosad and chlorantraniliprole, which is going to be in Bug Destroyer Roundup for lawns, and then also Scott's Grub-X are two good choices. And then for more kind of contact is going to be trichlorfon, which is Dilox, and then also carbaryl, which is found in some 7 formulations. Now on to grubs. So grubs are normally a late summer, early fall. We have seen some in some of our golf courses. I've gotten some reports in the last couple days. We did see some really high mass chafer populations. So we often think about these annual white grubs, or we call them land shrimp. If you do find them, they're also very good fishing bait. But they are actually the larvae of a lot of our scarab beetle species. This would include things like Japanese beetle, the green June bugs, which you might have seen a lot of this year. But one of the major components is mass chafers, and we saw a lot, particularly in late June and into July. We saw huge populations this year accumulating on some of our turf grass surfaces. So you might, at this point in the year, you are getting into where it would be curative. So if you have an area that's not responding to rain or to your irrigation, you might want to go over and kind of just give those plants a little bit of a tug. And if they peel up really easily, you'll notice the grubs that are underneath. They will be quite large and white, and they'll have the front of them will have legs. So that's how you know you're dealing with annual white grubs. Like I said, that Dilox, that trichlorfon is a really good insecticide. You will have to water that in to get down to these soil dwelling insects. The other way that you'll know you have grubs is that the animals will let you know. So things like raccoons, armadillos, and particularly skunks will go after those land shrimp, and particularly can very quickly tear up a lawn looking for those little morsels, or those little delicacies. So just again, keep an eye out for your lawn right now for fall armyworms and for grubs. And then also think about renovation when we get into this first beautiful week of September that we're slated to have. That's all I have, Jennifer. Thanks.
All right, thank you. And that is actually the end of our questions and topics. And I will now turn it back over to Donna to wrap us up.
Okay, so that's all the topics for today. Just as a reminder, let me share my screen real quick. All these town halls can now be found on the YouTube channel, MUIPM channel. And so you can find all the snippets and the live streams if you want to go back and re-watch them. Also, if you would like to ask a question, just remember that you will need to go back to the registration site and ask your question there at the registration site. So thank you for joining us. And our next town hall will be next week on September 8th at noon. So we'll see you then.